Hey, real quick, we'll give you a couple things to look at when you have an outdoor unit that's not working. Of course, this is tailored more toward the young guys. Just some simple, basic 4 or 5 checks. It's not going to be the thermostat. Everybody blames the thermostat, it seems, but I'm going to give you some reasons besides the thermostat. So stay tuned, check it out, let me know what you think. Okay, so we've got a pan switch up here, a float switch. What I would do then, if my unit is not running, the first thing you really want to do is make sure you know exactly what you're dealing with. So how the system's wired, if there's a float switch in there, you know, all the basic stuff, so you understand how that unit is operating and what can cause it not to operate. So in our case, where our outdoor unit is not running, I came up to the air handler. I know I have a float switch now. What I would then do is take this cover off, verify whether it's breaking the yellow circuit, the Y circuit, or the R, the power circuit. So the way that I wire them, I always break power, and that's obvious to anyone, homeowner, technician, because you're going to get there and unless there's batteries in the thermostat, everything's going to be blank. Nothing at all is going to run. I spoke to one of my buddies in the field the other day, and he said he always breaks Y. He said, I want the fan to run so it circulates air until I get there. And I'm like, that makes no sense to me, but you know, we each have our prerogative, and there's no wrong answer on that. It's just a personal preference. So he breaks the Y circuit. In that case, if the pan were to fill up with water due to a clogged drain, then when you get to the attic and inspect, then you physically see that you can put your hand down in there and there's water. That should indicate to you that you more than likely have a clogged drain line. I have been on a couple service calls where there's an actual crack in the primary pan, but that's a whole different thing. So make sure you check the float switch and the pan. All right, another reason your outdoor unit may not be running is your contactor coil is bad. So what we're going to do here, I've got my meter set up, and I'm going to go right to the side of the contactor coil where the blue and the yellow wire plug in, and I'm going to check voltage. I've got 24 volts, but it's not pulling the coil, or it's not pulling the switch closed. So what I would do then is I would take and basically do continuity on it as well, but we're going to call it ohms this time, right? The contactor coil is a load. It is a 24 volt load. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and remove one or both of the wires. I'm going to tuck it right here, and I'm going to ohm out this contactor coil. OL means open lead. That means that the wire is broken from one side to the other. It's not a continuous loop of wire. It's not a good coil. So what I would do then is change this contactor out. So let me do that real quick and wire it back up, and we'll get to the next possible cause for a unit not working. All right, we got our brand new contactor in, got it wired up, and as soon as I plugged in the yellow wire, the switch engaged. So I know that I've got 24 volts again. So I'm going to check 24 volts. Let me get it off of DC here. I got 25.05. So I've got my 24 volts. I can visually see that it's engaging that contactor. But now my unit's still not running. So what do you do when your 24 volts are there, but the unit's not running? Now you have to turn to the high voltage. So what I would do then is same voltmeter. I'm going to check power coming in. I've got 239, right? When this switch is closed, it should pass all that power across, and on this side, I've got nothing. You can see it right there, 0 volts. So what I've got in this case is power coming in and not passing through the switch. This is a double pole contactor. The voltage checks on it are pretty simple. I go from the bottom to the top. If this were a single pole contactor, you could basically use the hopscotch method if you wanted to, and kind of cross check if you wanted, and you would see that that switch is not working. But with a double pole contactor, it completely severs the circuit when it opens. So there's the load side that is, you know, no way of getting voltage from the line side. So watch those voltage checks. But in this case, power going in 239, power coming out 0. cut and dry all day. That's a bad contactor switch. So it's a 2-part component. Coil is included with the contactor, so we're going to replace it again. And that's it. One more reason that your outdoor unit may not be running is high voltage is not present at all. So I've got my meter set up, and I'm going right here, and I've got no high voltage coming in. Anything after that contactor is not going to work because you're not providing the proper power. So what I would do then is backtrack to the disconnect. Maybe you have a fused disconnect. I'm going to turn you around here and look at this one real quick. So what I've got here is a non-fused disconnect, and what I'm going to do is check power coming in. All right, so this is the line coming out. That's your outer 2 lugs. We've got nothing. So I'm going to check this Romex here. That's your line coming into your non-fused disconnect. So what I've got now is 240. So if it was a fused disconnect, you could check it the same way, you know, power coming in versus power leaving the disconnect going to the outdoor unit, and you may have a blown fuse. You can check that doing your voltage checks, or pull the fuse out and do a continuity check on it. So whatever you do, do it safely. If you have a blown fuse though, I would highly suggest, if you're a homeowner, contact a professional. If you are the professional, then now we're looking into what blew the fuse. Chances are you come across a bad compressor with a grounded winding, or maybe a fan motor. Possible that you could have a belly band heater that somehow has shorted out. So if you've got a blown fuse in the disconnect, that should lead you into other troubleshooting steps. So in this case, lo and behold, we had a trip breaker, so we're going to go into the compressor troubleshooting stuff more than likely. So just another scenario. All right, last one for the day. Outdoor unit's not working. Contactor, we're going to start there. That is where our high voltage comes in. If you check it, if you check your inlet side of your contactor, your line side, and you get 240 here, and you come across the switch and check it on the load side of the contactor and you get 240 again, and the unit's still not running, then the last basic thing to check is going to be your capacitor. I've seen capacitors fail completely. This being a dual capacitor, it's for the outdoor fan and the compressor. A lot of times it just blows and neither motor runs, but you could very well have a fan motor running and not the compressor, or the compressor running and not the fan motor. But if power comes in and power comes out, goes out the contactor, then you want to, the easiest thing to check is going to be your capacitor next. So remove power from the circuit, and you can use your meter and the capacitance checker, or your capacitance option on your meter to check that as well. So that's it. I'm going to get everything wired back up here and turn it back on. So leave a comment if you like. If not, I appreciate you watching. Trying to help some of the guys out there. Let me know what you think. Of course, the thermostat could be bad as well, but I've seen that not the case many times. So don't necessarily blame the thermostat for the outdoor unit not working. Do your checks, use your meter. All right, real quick check before we leave. We got the outdoor unit back going, new contactor installed. One thing that I would caution you to do is remember that a contactor is nothing more than a switch, and switches are supposed to pass power. They're not supposed to consume any power. So this is going to be just a tidbit on the contactor itself. But what I would tell you to do is you can check your line side, all right, 243. Check your load side, 243. You should not have a voltage drop across a contactor. So what I'm going to tell you is check your L1 side or your L2, whichever you call it, but check it going in and coming out. In my case here, I have a 0 volt reading on my meter. That means there is not a voltage drop across that switch. Part of your checks, you should be checking across the switch on the same side of power. I've got a 0.01 voltage drop. if you wind up with a contactor, whether it's brand new or it's been in the units for years, original to the equipment or whatever, if that contactor is showing you a voltage across the switch on the same leg of power on that contactor, whether it's single pole, 2-pole, 3-pole, whatever, a motor starter, that is bad. Switches pass power, they don't consume power. So I would recommend once you see that voltage, that is a voltage drop. That means it's coming in 240 or 120 and it's going back out less through that switch. The switch is consuming power just a little bit, and that's not supposed to happen. So I would replace it once you see a volt or two on that switch. So food for thought. Y'all have a good one.